The rain was relentless. It beat against the metal roof of the car like thousands of tiny, frantic fingers trying to break inside. Jack wiped the fogged-up windshield with his sleeve, but it barely helped. Old Route 9 was notorious for its pitch-black darkness, winding through miles of thick, suffocating pine forest. It was 2 a.m., and Jack was completely alone on the road. His phone had lost all signal miles ago. The GPS map was just a frozen, blank grid. Suddenly, the high beams cut through the torrential downpour and illuminated 2 figures standing on the narrow, muddy shoulder. Jack tapped the brakes. It was a young man and a woman. They stood perfectly upright, ignoring the storm, with their right arms stiffly extended. Their clothes looked bizarrely outdated. He wore a loose-cut, faded beige blazer, and she wore a long, floral-patterned dress. The fabric looked thin, meant for a warm summer evening, not a freezing midnight storm. Feelings of unease crept into Jack's chest, but his conscience wouldn't let him leave people out in the deluge. He pulled over. The rear door clicked open immediately. A heavy, freezing draft rushed into the car, bringing with it a sickening odor. It smelled of stagnant river water, wet soil, and a sharp metallic tang, like burnt wiring. "Need a ride ahead," the man said. His voice was low, flat, and completely monotone. "Sure, hop in. It's a nasty night," Jack replied, trying to sound welcoming. The couple slid into the back seat, and the door shut with a heavy, hollow thud that echoed in Jack's ears. "Where are you heading?" Jack asked, shifting back into drive. "To the old concrete bridge, just past the 40-mile mark," the woman answered. Her voice shared the exact same mechanical, lifeless tone as the man's. As Jack accelerated, a deep, unsettling silence filled the cabin. He glanced at the rearview mirror. The back seat was shrouded in deep shadows, but he could see their silhouettes. They were sitting completely rigid. Their heads turned, and their bodies didn't shift with the movement of the car. Strangely, Jack realized he couldn't hear the sound of wet clothes rustling, nor could he hear them breathing. Anxious to break the suffocating quiet, Jack turned on the radio. The speakers burst into a loud, aggressive hiss of static. He twisted the dial, searching for a station. "Shh! Krs! Shh!" Finally, a voice pierced through the white noise. It sounded distorted and hollow, like a vintage broadcast. "Repeating our top story tonight. Local authorities have issued an emergency weather warning for the Route 9 corridor. Drivers are strictly advised to avoid the old timber sections due to severe flash flooding." Jack frowned. The announcer's vocabulary and tone felt incredibly old-fashioned. "We have breaking news from the State Transit Police. A catastrophic collision has just been reported at the 40-mile mark of Route 9, near the old river bridge. A silver Ford Taurus has spun out of control on the slick asphalt, colliding head-on with a large pine tree." A cold sweat broke out on Jack's forehead. He checked his dashboard. The odometer read 39 miles. They were less than a minute away from the crash site. The radio crackled violently, and the announcer's voice returned, but now it sounded layered, as if multiple people were speaking the same words at once. Paramedics confirmed 2 fatalities at the scene. The victims have been identified as newlyweds, Michael and Emily Stone. They were returning home from their wedding reception when the vehicle hydroplaned. Today marks the 20th anniversary of this horrific event, which took place on June 30th, 2006. 2006? Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. The current year was 2026. In a panic, Jack adjusted the rearview mirror and looked directly at the back seat. At that exact microsecond, a flash of lightning split the night sky, flooding the interior of the car with blinding white light. Jack choked back a scream. The two passengers were staring directly at him. Their skin was a horrific, bruised shade of ash grey. Their eyes were entirely pitch black. No whites, no pupils, just two empty, liquid voids. The man's skull was visibly fractured across the temple, yet no blood ran down his cold face. The woman's shoulder was pushed up at an impossible broken angle, her collarbone tearing through the fabric of her floral dress. And they were smiling. A wide, unmoving, jaw-dropping grin that revealed rows of pale, gleaming teeth. "We are almost home, Jack," they whispered in perfect unison. The sound didn't come from their mouths. It echoed directly inside Jack's head. Suddenly, the radio erupted with the deafening sound of screeching tires, a woman's blood-curdling scream, and the sickening crunch of metal wrapping around solid wood. Then, the radio went dead, leaving only a flat, high-pitched whine. Jack slammed his foot onto the brake pedal, but it went completely loose beneath his boot. The car wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating on its own. The speedometer needle flew past 80, 90, 100 miles per hour. Through the sheets of blinding rain, the sharp, deadly curve and the dark structure of the old concrete bridge loomed ahead. And right at the apex of the turn stood a massive, jagged, ancient pine tree. "Thank you for the ride," a dual voice hissed right next to his ear. Two pairs of ice-cold, dead hands clamped onto Jack's shoulders. The grip was like iron, freezing his muscles and pinning his arms completely flat against his sides. He couldn't turn the wheel. He couldn't move. Jack screamed into the darkness as the headlights illuminated the rough, unforgiving bark of the tree trunk coming at him at terminal speed. The very last thing he experienced before the world shattered was the sound of joyful, echoing laughter from the seat behind him. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet, foggy dawn. A circle of police cruisers surrounded the mangled wreckage of Jack's car, which was deeply embedded into the trunk of the old pine tree. A young deputy stepped back from the shattered driver's side window, his face pale. "It's bad, Sheriff. He didn't even try to brake. The forensic tech says his foot was buried into the gas pedal," the deputy said, trembling slightly. "But there's something else. The registration says he was driving alone, but the entire back seat is soaking wet. It smells like stagnant swamp water and old rot." The veteran sheriff pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and looked up at the massive tree. "Today is June 30th, the sheriff whispered, blowing out a cloud of smoke. "Exactly 20 years ago today, during my first week on the force, I pulled a young couple out of a wrecked Ford Taurus against this exact same tree. Michael and Emily Stone. They never made it to their honeymoon." He cast a long look at the crushed dashboard inside the car. Underneath the cracked plastic, the ruined radio display suddenly flickered with a faint green light. A brief, soft hiss of static escaped the broken speaker, sounding exactly like a satisfied sigh, before it died out completely in the morning air.